Good morning. Welcome back to the Junius Malpe channel. Let's get right into some news and discussion for today. There's some interesting stories that are popping up, and we're going to learn some lessons from them, as we should, because a smart man, as we've said, learns from his mistakes, but a wise man always learns from the mistakes of others. And we've covered this type of mistake in the past, and it's regarding inflation, hyperinflation. This is one of the themes of the channel here. So hopefully most of you find this interesting and can stick around for the duration of this video and take a look at where it's going. The country we're talking about, the country that's in the news while we're all distracted by this stupid election here in the United States, and while most people are fixated on sporting events and their typical TV shows, there's a country in real trouble and regular everyday people suffering from real serious problems. Venezuela is going through a potential economic collapse, as we're seeing in the news. It's unfolding every day, worsening. Venezuelans have given up on counting their cash, and now they're weighing it. So that's a telltale sign right there. If you're stacking up bales and bricks of $100 bills to weigh them, to try to determine how much you have and how much it's worth and what you can buy with it, your currency is probably not very healthy anymore. So Venezuelans are giving up on counting it, and they're just weighing their cash. Here you have an image of a bakery owner, probably the end of the day, going through the till, adding things up, and he's got like 2.3 million bolivars of currency there, counting the incoming cash of the day. So that's a lot of money, 2.3 million. He must make some really good bread, or the currency's not worth that much. So you guys decide. The government now is considering printing larger banknotes for holidays. And the triple-digit inflation means that the largest bill isn't even worth 10 cents. The largest bill not even being worth 10 cents. Here you have someone actually weighing the currency out. There you go. They're not weighing out meat there or grain. They're weighing paper bills to determine how much they have. Absolutely disgusting. This is what governments do. Ladies and gentlemen, this is what central banks do. This is what centralized planning of the economy does. This is right here. Weimar Germany, Zimbabwe. We've done the list before. We can't account for all of them, but it's hundreds of countries. You've seen it. If you go through the archives of the channel here, we've scrolled by a giant list, a long list of countries that were absolutely destroyed by the erosionary effects of hyperinflation, how it just rots a nation, rots an economy. And here we see a country falling into the same exact situation. There's the fall of the Bolivar, and there it is, 2013, and then look at that. Just starts to slowly dip, 14, 15, and then it just falls off a cliff. What I found really interesting about this article when I was reading it and just going through some of the key facts here is that it was one of the strongest currencies at one point. One of the strongest currencies, and now it's been reduced to a nuisance. Basic purchases requiring hundreds of bills, and shoppers shoving piles of them into gym bags before venturing into crime-plagued streets, and shopkeepers stash thousands in boxes, and overflowing drawers in the absence of official data. Economists are left to guess what the inflation rate is. Estimates for this year range from 200% to 1,500%. Absolutely, that's the kind of thing, when you think about it, the government's not releasing accurate numbers. That's one of the criticisms that we're seeing in a lot of these articles. Well, Venezuela's not releasing accurate numbers. That's the exact same thing the United States government does. They do not release accurate inflation numbers. They do not release any accurate information as it pertains to employment, unemployment, the economy. You've seen shadow stats. You've seen the Chris Martenson video where he talks about fuzzy numbers or funny numbers. There is a concerted effort here in the West to release disinformation and inaccurate information to keep the game, to keep the casino going, to keep things rolling so people can make money and Wall Street can turn a buck. Well, it's a house of cards here, and we're built out of the same paper, the same cards, the same types of notes that Venezuela is. The same effects, the same consequences will eventually come home to roost and will eventually strike the US dollar and the United States and then ripple through the world economy. It's going to happen. That's something we all have to come to realize. And I think most of you here are firmly aware of that and understand it. There's a lot of people that do, and then there's a lot of people that don't. They're almost in a state of denial when it comes to that. But this is a clear sign of hyperinflation taking place. A few weeks ago, the government quietly asked 5 currency companies to submit bids for bigger bills, 500,000, 5,000, 10,000, perhaps 20,000 Bolivar notes, according to someone with direct knowledge of the order. So as you know, in, Zimbabwe? In Zimbabwe, they ended up releasing the $100 trillion note. So they had the record, the largest paper note ever printed in history. So maybe that's what Venezuela's going for. They want to get in the world record. You know, that's everyone's goal. When you're a little kid, you're like, I want to break a world record. I want to get in there. Well, maybe they have an economic planning department that has the mindset of a toddler, and that's their goal. They woke up last year and they decided, hey, let's try to get in the world record books, print up the largest note, and they're on their way to do that at this point in time. And according to Stephen Hank, an economist at Johns Hopkins, he said redenominating banknotes is raising the white flag. No one wants to do it, but eventually their hand gets forced. If you don't want to do it, then manage your economy appropriately, and don't make these types of mistakes. This type of thing happens, and you wonder. It's like sticking your hand in a boiling pot of water, and then curiously wondering why your skin's falling off. It's a consequence of your behavior and your actions. These consequences that Venezuela is going through have happened time and time again. You wonder how they didn't see it, how they didn't know this was going to happen. It's mind-boggling. Well, they're in trouble. It's getting worse. Today on the news there was some stories regarding riots, tear gas, unrest. That's the course of things. It seems like it takes that natural course of things. Inflate the rising prices, the currency destabilization, and then the social unrest. Eventually it leads to major problems such as an insurrection, a civil war, a revolution, whatever you want to call it. That could be in the cards. That could be in the near future for Venezuela, unfortunately. Let's get on an off-ramp here and kind of divert and look close to home, because I found a headline in an article that, well, it was almost reminiscent of Venezuela several months ago or a year ago. Some of the same symptoms mentioned about Venezuela are mentioned here in this article regarding the United States. Prices skyrocketing, but only for things you actually need. We're seeing an increase in textbooks, tuition, childcare, medical costs, of course, and most of you are aware Obamacare is about to skyrocket. Food and beverages, yes, you definitely need food. Housing costs, new cars. There's a whole basket of goods. A lot of things have gone up in value, or should I say not value, but in costs, the price of goods. So there they are, rising. If you look at that black bar there, that's overall inflation of 55%. And there's a lot of these products and a lot of these services are above that line. Now, gold was not part of that article, but we've seen gold prices steadily increase from about 1999 to, it definitely exploded there a few years ago and then has settled down a little bit, but it's still up for the last decade and a half. It is definitely higher over the course of time. Gold rebounding after October loss to finish at a 1-month high. Gold's definitely reacting to some of this instability. Looked this morning, saw that oil prices had taken a dip because of a huge supply glut on the U.S. side, and even with the dip in oil, we still saw a lot of strength in rising prices in gold. We've talked about that in the past, how gold and oil used to be really tied together in their behavior and in their pattern, but now they seem somewhat disconnected, kind of independent, acting on their own. And I think gold is it's basically taken a life of its own in having to react to things in the world that are absolutely unique and uncharted waters as far as what's going on economically, global foreign policies, and the relationship between all these different economies and nations And then also what's happening, obviously, politically between the United States in itself and then also in its relationships with other countries, trade deals. There's obviously a big election going on here. But there's some people trying to run for the highest office so they can make decisions to steer this ship further off the waterfall. We're seeing rip-roaring gold demand. Now, this was an article about the U.S. Gold Eagles. Apparently, a total of 100,500 of these American Gold Eagles, you guys are familiar with them, the investment bullion coin, were sold by the U.S. Mint. And we're seeing running sales total for these coins for the first 10 months of the calendar year is 665,500. They are selling like hotcakes. This has beaten the full year total for 2015 and leaves the 2014 full year total of 415,500 in the dust. Imagine that. Over 250,000 ounces of gold or gold eagles have sold, more than in all of 2014. We're not even done with this year yet. There are months left. So unless the U.S. Mint runs out of coins, the 2016 results have a strong chance of surpassing 743,500 coins. So clearly, people are buying gold. And they're not buying it just for the pretty little images that are struck on it or for collecting reasons. There is a distrust in the global economy and in the system. That's what that was right there. That was a sign and a symptom of the populations as a whole, kind of collectively, a collective subconscious, if you will, not trusting the direction we're going in. And I think it points to, what we've talked about in previous videos, a future that is more bleak, not as productive as the present, where gold is going to hold more value than it does currently, and the paper currencies that we're surrounded by and forced to use and exchange with, they will be depreciated greatly and have far less purchasing power, similar to what we're seeing in Venezuela with the bolivar. So now's the time to unload paper. Now's the time to get rid of currency when it can still actually buy gold. I can almost assure you that people in Venezuela wish they had bought gold earlier, and most of them, there's no exchange rate at this point. When a currency is that sick, you can't take a wheelbarrow full of cash to buy any amount of gold. Gold people aren't selling in Venezuela, and people with cash are unable to buy it. Almost guaranteed that scenario is happening right now. HSBC saying buy gold no matter who wins the election. The precious metal could reach levels not seen since 2013. There's one certain winner of next week's presidential election, according to HSBC Holdings, and that is investors in gold. They're calling for it to rise about 8%, no matter who wins. And then there was another article out on CNBC saying that U.S. elections will push gold to 1,500. It's coming from a technical analyst, and they're talking about gold on course to head as high as $1,500 an ounce, according to this guy, saying that the current environment will disrupt the usual inverse relationship between the U.S. dollar and the precious metal. Now, that's all fine and dandy to see articles like that on mainstream outlets because that's what they do. They generate views, content, drum up interest, get people like us to go over there and click on it and read things. But a lot of times CNBC and the individuals that write and are part of those news outlets, they don't really believe gold. It's just something for them to write stories about. If you sat down, had a cup of coffee or a beer with them, and they're likely some pretty good people. I'm sure they don't. I'm sure there are some that actually produce propaganda on purpose, insiders, whatever. But there are people that they genuinely just don't know. They don't believe in gold because it's all they've ever been known. It's all they've ever been told, taught in college. That they went to school and were just indoctrinated from day one, and only taught one side of things. So that's probably why they believe the way they do. But it's going to shock people. We're going to see it. It's like that cold bucket of water that's going to wake some of these people up. It's going to be uncomfortable here in the United States, especially because I think a lot of you that are out there that are part of this channel are more fortunate. I think I'm not saying Americans are all stupid and ignorant. I know there's a lot of good and very smart people here, but it just seems that when I meet a lot of people from other places, they have more time to think, I guess, or maybe it's just because I'm talking or meeting people that travel. But when I meet people from places like Australia or New Zealand or England, um, anywhere in Europe, it seems like a lot of them are very more aware and alert of what's happening globally and economically. So I think Americans might be in a rough place when things kind of go off the tracks. They're going to be shocked and unable to grasp with the new reality. Well, thanks for participating, all of you. Thanks for being part of today's channel. And stick around. Hopefully we can produce a variety of more content as we go into the new year. After this election, we'll see what happens. I'm sure there will be some stories to make. But thanks for being here. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and participate in the comments below. And always, I appreciate your support for being part of this channel.